Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive where we take these little snippets of information and we kind of just see what we can unpack from them.
Yeah, we just see what we can squeeze out.
Exactly. And today is a really, really fascinating one. It's just a single line of text.
It really is.
But as always, it's pretty amazing what we can pull out of even the smallest, the tiniest little piece of the puzzle. So.
Oh, absolutely. And this one gets right at the core of what it means to begin something, anything, really.
Okay, so let's just lay it all out there for the listener. What is this mysterious single line of text we're going to be dissecting today?
All right, so picture this. You're scrolling through who knows where, maybe an old email, maybe a note on your phone, and you come across this line, two cousins Chuck, Quinn at Eric testing podcast ideas. And that's it. That's all we have.
Two cousins Chuck Eric testing podcast ideas. Okay, so first of all, lowercase everything, no punctuation to speak of, very informal.
Very, yeah, like back of the napkin brainstorming session vibes, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right away, we know this is about the very beginning of something, the very first inkling of a potential podcast. And that's what we're going to dig into today, those initial sparks of creativity.
Exactly. We're going back to square one.
Hmm.
Before the microphones, before the editing software, even before like a concrete idea.
It's like peeking behind the curtain, right? You see
Yeah.
the finished product, the podcast out there in the world, but we're interested in that messy early stage.
Right. And what's interesting to me is right off the bat, the source material tells us something about the creators, the two cousins part.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of hints at a dynamic, a built-in relationship.
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about it. Most of us have cousins. We've got that shared history, the inside jokes, maybe some rivalries too. Who knows?
Right, exactly. And when you're starting something creative with someone, having that existing bond can be huge.
Hmm.
I mean, think about the shorthand you already have, the way you can just bounce ideas off each other
Yeah.
without a lot of explanation.
Yeah, it can definitely make communication easier, and there's probably a level of trust already there. But do you think it's always a good thing working with someone you're close to? I mean, couldn't that also lead to some, complications?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you could have clashing visions, trouble separating the personal from the professional, all sorts of things. It's not always smooth sailing.
It's interesting to consider, right? Because on the one hand, you have that ease of communication, but on the other hand, clear roles and boundaries might be harder to establish when you're dealing with family.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
trade-off.
Yeah.
And who knows how it played out with Chuck and Eric, but it's definitely something to think about, the dynamics of collaboration.
And something else that jumps out at me is the names themselves, Chuck, Wand, Eric, all lowercase, again, super informal, almost like they jotted this down as a reminder to themselves, not like a big announcement to the world.
Absolutely. It underscores just how early stage this is. They're not even thinking about branding or marketing or anything like that. They're just two guys exploring an idea.
Hmm. And that's what I find so fascinating about this. It really strips away all the bells and whistles we associate with podcasting and boils it down to its essence. Two people, an idea.
It's like the seed of a podcast, before it's sprouted, before it's even been planted in the ground.
Okay, so let's talk about the action here. Testing podcast ideas. What does that even look like at this stage?
Well, I mean, imagine you and I are Chuck and Eric right now. What would we be doing?
I mean, would we just be sitting around tossing out different concepts for shows?
Exactly. Maybe we're riffing on current events or, sharing stories, trying to figure out what kind of format works best.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of us is really into interviews and the other is more interested in storytelling,
Mm.
just feeling things out.
Or maybe we're even like trying out different roles, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who's the who's the guest, or maybe it's a more of a co-hosted thing, whose voice resonates, whose personality comes through the mic.
Yeah, and are we recording any of this? Are we just talking, or are we actually, hitting record on our phones just to see what it sounds like?
That's a great question. I mean, testing could involve actual recording, or it could just be like brainstorming and experimenting with different voices and personas.
And it makes you think about all the podcasts out there that we listen to, the ones with, fancy intros and music and sound effects. They all started somewhere.
Every single one. Yeah, every single one started with a conversation, probably even simpler than this snippet we're looking at.
It's kind of humbling, isn't it, to think that something so small can eventually become something so, polished and complex.
It really is, and it's a good reminder that you don't need a lot of fancy equipment or, a big team to get started. Sometimes all you need is an idea and a willingness to experiment.
And that's actually a perfect segue back to what we're all about here, helping our listeners learn efficiently and thoroughly. And I think this little piece of text really illustrates something crucial about the creative process.
What's that?
Well, it shows that the very beginning is often messy and undefined, and that's okay. In fact, that's kind of essential because it's in that messiness that the real magic happens.
Right. It's about giving yourself permission to play, to try things out without judgment, to just see what sticks.
And I think that's so valuable for anyone listening who wants to start their own podcast or write a book or, whatever creative endeavor they're interested in. You don't have to have it all figured out from the start.
Exactly. You don't need the perfect plan or the perfect equipment or the perfect anything. You just need to start.
So let's just recap here for the listener. What can we learn from this one little line of text?
Well, first of all, we see the importance of relationships in creative endeavors. Chuck and Eric are cousins. They already have that bond, this shared history that can be a real asset.
And we see the value of starting small, of just getting your ideas out there, even if they're messy and unformed.
And most importantly, we see the power of experimentation, of just trying things out to see what works.
Absolutely. And I think what's so cool about this is that it leaves us with a lot of unanswered questions. What kind of podcast ideas were Chuck and Eric testing? What were they passionate about? What kind of format did they envision?
All right. Did they ever actually launch a podcast? Did their ideas evolve? Did they hit any roadblocks? I mean, it really sparks the imagination.
And I think those are the kinds of questions that are always worth asking. When we look at the finished product, anything really, a podcast, a book, a movie, whatever it might be, it's always fascinating to think about those early stages, the messy beginnings, the sparks of inspiration.
And it reminds us that every creator, every innovator starts somewhere. And that somewhere is often a lot more humble and a lot more uncertain than we might imagine.
So there you have it, folks. Another deep dive complete. And as always, we're left with more questions than answers. But hey, isn't that the best kind of learning?
Absolutely. It's the kind that keeps us curious, the kind that keeps us thinking and exploring.
So thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep on diving.
Happy diving, everyone.